Your mind's running circles again, second guessing every word you said. Take a breath, reset your track. You don't need to hold yourself back. Stop overthinking, start connecting. Confidence maxing.
All right, welcome to another episode of Confidence Maxing Live. We've got a good show lined up for you today. So we're going to be talking about kind lies, unkind truths in the AI job boom? Question mark? Okay, so the first thing that we'll get into today is Dario Amodi, hopefully I'm saying that right, spent last year warning of an AI white-collar bloodbath. Now he's changing the narrative. This is from Nick Lichtenberg from Fortune. So for most of the last year, Dario Amodi was one of Silicon Valley's most prominent doomsayers on AI employment. The Anthropic CEO said publicly and repeatedly that AI could eliminate half of entry-level white-collar knowledge work within years. The kind of stark projection that made him the rare tech founder willing to say out loud what many of his peers only whispered. So it was notable at Anthropic's briefing to the press on financial services in Lower Manhattan, sitting on stage along JP Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon for the first time, when Amodi reached for a very different intellectual framework, the Jevons paradox. Quoting Modi here, "If you automate 90% of the job," he said, "then everyone does 10% of the job, and the 10% kind of expands to be 100% of what people do, and kind of 10x's their productivity." So a couple of examples, the Jevons paradox that the author gives here is, let's see. So Jevons was a 19th century British economist who observed something counterintuitive about coal. As steam engines became more efficient and coal cheaper to use, total coal consumption went up, not down. Efficiency, he argued, stimulates demand rather than reducing it. He gives the example applied to AI and labor. The logic might run like this. If AI makes a lawyer 10 times more productive, legal services become cheaper. Cheaper legal services mean more people and businesses use them. More demand for legal services means more lawyers, not fewer. So, yeah, there are definitely two schools of thought and two sort of competing narratives when it comes to what will AI do to all the jobs. There's plenty on the doom and gloom side saying, AI is going to take everyone's jobs and all that kind of stuff. And then you've kind of got the sort of the Mark Andreessen camp that's like AI is going to result in a job boom, and then there's going to be sort of more demand because the people that were priced out of services are not priced out anymore, so that they can actually partake of said services, and that will lead to more job demand for the people who provide those services. So, as I've argued before on the show, typically when any kind of new technology appears, it ushers in a period of uncertainty followed by a period of expansion. People were very uncertain about the car. You can find articles. There's a decent account on X called the Pessimists Archive, and I just remember one that they had talking about the very first subway was in London, and people were afraid to go underground because they thought that that's where demons were. And so they were like literally afraid to use the subway because they were like all the evil spirit. This is in, I believe, the late 1800s. Um, they were like, we can't go underground because all the demons are down there. And of course, subway led to better transportation, probably more job opportunities for people who lived in different parts of the city. Certainly, they could get to where they were going faster. The car the same way. There were articles that said something along the lines of, if a man goes faster than a horse, his neck will snap. uh, and of course, the car opened up all kinds of new sort of segments of the economy, and you've got your mechanics, your oil industry, convenience store industry. People are able to get to different locations so that they can provide their services and all that kind of stuff. Even the internet. Can't remember the gentleman that made the what turned out to be a bad prediction, which was something along the lines of the internet is much. He compared it to the fax machine, and it was basically like, look, it's it's gonna be a fad, but yet the internet's revolutionized everything, and made connecting with people across the world way better. Spun up multiple sort of microeconomies of app development and all this other stuff. So my personal view, I think I was doom and gloom there for a little bit, where I'm like, oh man, all this stuff is coming on so rapidly. I think in the short term, it absolutely is going to cause some disruption. I mean, how could it not? But I think longer term, and the rub is nobody knows. Like no one can predict uh, all that accurately in most cases, and so I think what you'll find is short term disruption and then long term opportunity, and I think it's going to be very interesting. I do think it's directionally accurate. I don't know how many more people are going to be hiring lawyers, so to speak, but I could see a world where law firms like develop their own AI models that specialize in their type of law, and so they're able to. A lot more people are going to be able to use their services, and maybe they'll have more. I don't know, more paralegals, or maybe more lawyers checking over the AI work and making sure it fits with everything that needs to be done in that particular case. But imagine a app or a website where instead of a law firm working with hundreds of people, they could work with tens of thousands of people, because people aren't priced out of the services. I don't know necessarily if we need a lot more people partaking of legal services and litigating and suing and all that kind of stuff. I don't know that that's necessarily good, but as an example, I could see that happening for sure. All right. I'd be interested in your thoughts. What do you think is going to happen with all that? Do you think it's going to be a white collar apocalypse? Or do you think that it's just going to be a temporary disruption and then everything will end up being okay, like it typically is? All right. That's our first story. Our second one. So I ran across this. This post was shared and then reshared. So this one's the original from late last year. We have a graph here for those listening on podcast, and it kind of looks like two different waves. One wave is going sort of up and to the right. The other wave is going down and to the right. and there are there are three waypoints on each wave at sort of the crest of every wave. The one that goes upward says it unkind truth, a wave going up, unkind truth, a wave going up, unkind truth. The other one says kind lie, goes down further, a kind lie, goes down further, a kind lie. And the unkind truths are part of a functional system, and the kind lies are part of a dysfunctional system. And so I saw this, and I thought it was really interesting, and a lot of other people did too. When I saw a lot of comments that were like, "Oh, I think about this all the time." And so I'll read William Maher's take on this. An extreme commitment to the truth makes relationships acutely dysfunctional, but systems chronically functional. Think Elon Musk. An extreme commitment to kindness makes relationships acutely functional, but systems chronically dysfunctional. Think Sweden or the United Kingdom. And this got me thinking of, this is one of those principles that I think can be applied more broadly to, could be entire societies, right? It could be entire societies, but it could be like your relationship with, like if you have a company, like your relationship with your co-founder of your company, or personal relationships, that kind of thing, where the more kind lies you tell, whatever the sort of the root problem is, or the root sort of dysfunction, the thing that needs to be addressed, speaking plainly, like the thing that needs to be addressed that's not being addressed, the longer that goes, then you've drifted really far from where you were originally, where it would have been very easy, and the effort involved to have that conversation wouldn't have been much. But if you let it go for 6 months or 18 months or 20 years in some cases, then guess what? It's going to be a much more difficult proposition, because you're going to have a lot more heavy lifting, and you're going to have to reconcile all the kind of lies that you've told in the past. Whereas if you're telling an unkind truth multiple times, and you're just addressing things honestly, and I think the nuance here is, it says unkind truth, right? What we might read into that is it's presumably a truth that might be uncomfortable to tell and has a potential to hurt someone's feelings. That would be my read into that. You would have to ask the author if that's what he intended, but I think you can deliver an unkind truth in a kind way. It doesn't mean that you're a jerk, right? It doesn't mean that you're intentionally hurting someone's feelings. The truth may hurt someone's feelings, but if it's sort of directionally appropriate for, I'll give you an example. Like, if you have two co-founders, but they have different visions for how the company should be run, and one co-founder, is sort of appeasing the sort of the stronger co-founder with a kind lie about how things are going or the direction, and they're just kind of going along with it, but they know it's not the right thing for the company, then like that's not a good situation. But if they're able to tell an unkind truth, like, hey, when you do this, it causes this problem, you get less drift, and you're heading in a good direction, because you're, nothing else, you're speaking honestly to how you not only how you feel about the situation, but your read on the situation and what needs to be done, right? And so you can still say that in a kind way of like, hey, I've noticed that you're doing this. You probably don't mean anything by it, but here's how that's affecting this, that, or the other. And so you can still tell those unkind truths in a kind way. And this got me thinking of, for those of you who have read my book, what book is that? It's Confidence Maxing. For those of you that have read my book, who've read the intro to my book, I talk about the war on human connection. And, it kind of got me thinking of like larger kind lies and unkind truths. And so I was doing a little bit of thinking on this. Like, there are several components to the war on human connection. I've covered them in other spots, including my book, but I'll go through a few of them here. So if you haven't been exposed to the war on human connection, it is a concept in the intro of my book where I talk about how there's several factors that have played into just us being a less social society over the last, say, 50, 60 years or so. And so when you layer all the elements of the world and human connection on top of each other, then it creates a pretty much perfect system for the results that we're currently getting. The friendship recession and all those kinds of things. So, one, the death of the third space. The kind lie, looking back and kind of seeing what's happened is, online groups have replaced cafes, libraries, and parks in many cases. In terms of people hanging out at those spots, or they've replaced the third spaces that just have gone away completely. And these online substitutes are just as good. Maybe they're even better. It's progress. Well, the unkind truth is physical third spaces are non-negotiable for low-stakes, repeated casual interactions that build a real social capital. And it's been that way for thousands of years. I say thousands of years. It's been that way at least since the humans have formed sort of tribes. And even in like agrarian societies, you got to think like, in my mind, I'm thinking 200 or 300 years ago, where, you worked, and you're probably a farmer, you probably worked a lot, and you worked a lot all the time, but you probably had get-togethers in your community, you probably had church, you probably had other spots, right? And then you went back to work, because you just had to work all the time to even survive like the harsh winters and stuff like that. But just informal third spaces, just physical places where you met. If we boil it down to that definition, humans have been doing that for as long as humans have been humans. So the unkind truth is we need those spots for repeated casual interactions that are physical, low stakes places. We need that. The productivity wage divergence. The kind lie is grind harder, optimize your life, and material gains will eventually buy you the relationships and fulfillment you want. Work is purpose. That might be an example of a kind lie. Could be a kind lie that you tell yourself. Could be a kind lie that you've picked up from society that's telling you that. Grind, grind, grind. Grind set, hustle, hustle, hustle. The reality is like, okay, well, nothing wrong with being ambitious, but the unkind truth is when real wages stall while hours and sort of the cognitive load explodes, people simply run out of time, energy, and bandwidth for doing things socially. It makes it more difficult. So when you take away the third spaces and you can boil it down to one sentence, your dollar does not go as far as it used to. I don't think that's a controversial statement. Then you don't have as many places to go. and you don't have as much money to spend because your commitments have swelled, your dollar's not going as far as it used to. You start to see the storm create. You start to see the storm rumbling in the distance, in terms of the war on human connection. Next, deinstitutionalization and crime tolerance. Kind lie is tolerance, compassion, and non-judgment are always the moral choice. Visible disorder, untreated mental illness, and eroded public safety are just the surface issues we can manage with more empathy. The unkind truth is when societies refuse to enforce basic norms around safety and accountability and institutional care for the severely mentally ill, the chronically addicted or repeat offenders, trust collapses and people retreat from public life. I would challenge anyone to argue with me on that, because I do not think you have a leg to stand on. This entire show and this entire, like, all of it could be devoted 100% to deinstitutionalization and crime tolerance. I choose not to, because then, like, I would be in a terrible mood. I think you'd be in a terrible mood too. It's important to talk about this stuff, but it's also important to, like, save your own sanity. But there are many examples of repeat offenders or people that should be institutionalized for life, getting released, committing more crime, and contributing to the decrease in perceived safety of insert wherever, parks, neighborhoods, just your average place that you might go to hang out with people, right? For just a low stress, low impact sort of socializing in your local community, right? I had a client tell me one time, and this was in the Bay Area, and I won't go into specifics about the client, but they told me about, like, they were walking home one night and they just encountered presumably a homeless person with a sword, swinging it around, like an actual sword. It's like, do you think you felt very safe? No, you probably didn't. My old neighborhood, there was a park nearby, and my wife and I volunteered to kind of like manage they have one of those small libraries that you've probably seen them. It's not very big, but it has books that people can take, and if people want to leave books, they can leave books there. And they tried using just plexiglass for the like the door of the library, so you could see what books were in there in our old neighborhood. The plexiglass got shattered so frequently that the people that built the library, was some neighbors of ours, they just put plywood up. And it's like, what good to your community is smashing the plexiglass so that you can, I don't know, get a trophy? But it's just little things like that I mean, it's literally the broken window theory, right? The unkind truth is that safety has to be enforced. Like, your streets have to be safe, your parks have to be safe, your libraries have to be safe for people to use them. Don't take it up with me, take it up with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And there are people who probably shouldn't be walking around on the street because they make things less safe for the people who are law-abiding. And if you have a problem with that, oh boy, I don't know. May God be with you, because I think that's the absolute wrong take. So moving on, like I said, like the institutionalization and crime tolerance, the last thing I'll say on it. It could be this entire show, but I choose not to because there are just so many examples that it would get depressing really quickly. So next, algorithmic vampires. The kind lie is that social media and smartphones connect us more than ever. The algorithm just shows you what you like. It's harmless entertainment. And the unkind truth is the business model is engineered to hijack attention, dopamine, and outrage circuits at the direct expense of, getting off your phone and doing anything else. And I think if you ever handle a smartphone with a social media app that has some sort of algorithm, then you know this to be true for any length of time. Your time and your attention is their money. So I'm always very wary of just understanding that. Yes, social media connects people more than ever, and people have made friends, gotten married, and done great things that have impacted society in positive ways via social media and the connections they're able to form. But there's no such thing as a panacea of only good things, right? It's there's always trade-offs 100% of the time. Like if you don't think that there are trade-offs, then you haven't looked at something deeply enough. All right, next, pandemic isolationism. The kind lie is remote work, Zoom happy hours, and staying home are safer, more flexible, and just as socially rich. The virus changed everything, but everyone adapted beautifully. And this kind of hit a peak in, like 2021, right? I think things have slowly gotten better, but the unkind truth is the extended experiment in physical and social withdrawal created measurable, lasting social rust, lower tolerance for in-person friction, weakened conversation skills, and normalized avoidance. And I wonder. I don't even think we fully grasp the harmful effects of social isolation. I remember having conversations with my friends that have had kids, and they they had like two years effectively of their life. Which, think about it, if you're a kid, 2 years is that could be like 15 or 20% of your entire life up to that point, right? For a 40-year-old, it's going to be way different than, say, a 15-year-old or a 10-year-old, something like that. And I wonder how much that's going to impact, because I don't think we fully know yet. All I can tell you is being isolated for a year or 2 years or even less, like, boy, that just really did a number on a lot of people and a lot of negative impact there. Okay, last one, friendship as a service. Another way to think about this is AI companionship. The kind lie is AI friends, virtual partners, and digital intimacy are harmless supplements or even upgrades, no drama. Think about it like there's no drama. People are all, your pocket friend is always available and it's perfectly tailored for you. The unkind truth is they are sophisticated simulations that scratch the itch of social connection without any sort of true reciprocity or vulnerability or growth or conflict that can make real relationships functional. Have disagreements with people, have good faith disagreements with people. You have to state your own view and they push back on that, and maybe you see where they're coming from, so you adjust your view a little bit. I mean, that's how humans are supposed to interact. But then you have AI companions coming down the pike, and it's anyone's guess what that's going to look like when that explodes even more than it already has. And so there are unkind truths that we need to tell ourselves as a society, specifically around connecting with people. And kind of to wrap this section up here, what I'll posit as well is that when it comes to unkind truth and kind lies, we covered some of the interpersonal stuff, like, I disagree with my co-founder about this thing, but I'm going to tell them an unkind truth instead of a kind lie. Okay. We've covered society level, where, oh well, maybe we'll just do kind lies about, uh, the people pushing people into the subway or whatever, right? We'll just do kind lies instead of unkind truth. But I think this also extends to an individual with themselves, and the unkind truth or the kind lie that you're telling yourself. The easiest person to delude is yourself. And that's a quote from someone. I did not come up with that. And I think, I'm thinking of how do you start to tell yourself unkind truths? Because humans are probably the best at lying to ourselves in some form or fashion. In my experience working with people with their people skills, it's funny. I would say I'm thinking specifically about like how people communicate with themselves, especially when it comes to how they're thinking about, improvement, or they understand that they have some sort of skill gap and they want to get better at it. They aren't very kind to themselves. I would say that they're telling themselves a lot of unkind lies, actually, where they're berating themselves and they're not really pulling. They might be pulling the wool over their eyes, but they're not doing it in a very kind way. And so, in many ways, I think the sort of the kind truth that you can say to yourself, instead of like, oh, I'm always a failure, or I always do this, or speaking in absolutes, is simply talking to yourself like you would talk to a friend. And I cover this extensively in chapter in chapter 5. You can treat yourself like a friend, because most people don't. So definitely good to keep in mind, like where in your life interpersonally, or where in your life are you telling yourself kind lies, or are you telling other people kind lies when you should be telling them unkind truths, but said in a kind way. Like, how I think about it, to wrap a bow on this, is every person is, by and large, doing things for what they believe, keyword what they believe, are good reasons. Like, they have good internal reasons for doing what they're doing. And so when you're telling someone an unkind truth, oftentimes you're giving them a different perspective on what they're doing, or how they're approaching something, right? What we typically don't want to do is attack them for, oh, I can't believe you did this, or I can't, like, we're not looking to attack people. We're just saying, like, hey, you may not have realized this, but when you do this happens, or when I see you do this, it makes me feel X, kind of the nonviolent communication stuff. And it's really helpful to give them some sort of fake because of, like, hey, you maybe didn't realize you were doing this. Oh, I didn't realize. Even if they kind of did, it helps them save face, where it makes them easy. It makes it easier for them to do a behavioral U-turn, to stop a certain behavior or adjust a certain behavior, right? And so I think it's a fascinating topic, because there are layers to it. Like, we spent 20 minutes just talking about this one individual component. But I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on what you think of kind lies versus unkind truths. Yeah, let me know. You can hit me up on the socials at @DJeffCallahan. You can also send me a question that you'd like me to answer on a future live stream. And we talked about the World and Human Connection and some other goodies today. One final plug: my book, Confidence Maxing. If you're interested in that kind of thing, if you want to improve your people skills, you want to stop overthinking, you want to have better conversations, you want to become more socially confident, Confidence Maxing, available on Amazon, available on Audible. And it is pretty good, if I say so myself, and that is a very kind truth that I'm going to leave you with. Other than that, we will talk again soon, and I'm going to play you out with the jingle.
If your mind's running circles again, second guessing every word you said, take a breath, reset your track. You don't need to hold yourself back.